Hello, welcome to School Committee Update. Today with Ward 6 member Ellenor Barish. I'm Sarah Fishman. How are you doing, Ellenor?
I'm doing well, thanks, Sarah. It's nice to see you.
I hope some point we're doing like real rather than real virtual. We're getting there, right?
Yes.
If you could just give a little background to start things off, how long you've lived in Somerville, how long you've been on the school committee?
Sure. So I have lived in Somerville since 2004. So I guess that's just about 17 years now. And this is my first term on school committee. So about 1.5 years on school committee.
And you're running again?
Yes, I pulled papers on Tuesday. So I am going to run for a second term. It wasn't a simple or obvious choice, but I feel as committed as ever to the students of Somerville. So I'm looking forward to being able to continue my work with school committee.
That's as good a reason as any. So you have 3 kids, right?
Yes.
And are they all in, and they're all in Somerville Public Schools?
They are. Mm-hmm.
What grades are they, or roughly how old?
Yeah, no, I have a 1st grader at the Brown School, a 6th grader at the Kennedy School, and a 9th grader at Somerville High School.
Oh my goodness. That's like triple hit there or something. I don't know.
It's 3 times.
That means having to pay attention to a lot of different curricula, I would imagine.
Yes, and evening meetings and parent-teacher conference schedules and concerts. Wow. Yes. Yes.
Wow. Well, good for you. So kids are back now. Students are back in the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. How has the transition from Zoom school, as they call it, to being in the classroom, how has that transition gone for you and your family?
So from a logistical standpoint, obviously there were some adjustments to make. Like you have to get up and eat breakfast and get dressed and get out of the house, right? I mean, because prior to going back to school in person, the kids could kind of take their time and eat their breakfast in their rooms if they needed to, if they were running late. So that's a bit of an adjustment. But my younger 2, who are back in person now, were both very eager to go back in person. So it didn't take a lot of cajoling, I guess I should say, to make sure that, they got up and dressed and everything on time. My 6th grader was actually coordinating with her friends a week in advance to start waking up at 7 and making sure that they were,
wow,
that they had adjusted, to the new schedule.
Like a time change or something.
Yes.
So
yes.
The 9th grader, is the high school back in session in classrooms?
They are going back tomorrow for their
I
first...
knew it was something like that.
Yeah, so tomorrow, Friday, they'll have sort of a shortened day with an orientation, just kind of understand where their classrooms are, understand the safety protocols and all of that. And then next week, they'll start with a regular schedule.
Okay, I don't know if I knew that. So you already sort of anticipated my question, which is, now that people are getting vaccinated, what are the safety protocols that are still going to be followed in the classroom for teachers, kids, everybody?
Yeah, so of course, vaccination is wonderful and a big help, but it isn't a sure thing. So as far as I know, the safety protocols that have been in place will continue to be in place. The only adjustment is that as per sort of the DESE recommendations and CDC guidelines and such, the distance between students requirement was reduced to 3 feet, but everyone will still be masking. There will still be, reminders to wash hands and sanitize.
Do they wear masks? Pardon me, do they wear masks when they have recess? They have to take them off when they're eating, I would guess. But when they're outside and they're close to each other, but they're outside, do they have to wear them?
Yes, sure. Okay. Yeah. So, they do get mask breaks for eating and, drinking water and things like that. But generally they have their masks on at all times.
Okay. And now the high school is offering vaccines to students 16 and older now that Pfizer vaccine has been approved for younger people. So do you have any sense, is it too soon to say how many kids have already done that, or whether there's resistance to it, or how it's going?
So I haven't heard about resistance. It's not a requirement at this point. So it'd be hard for us to measure, or hard for me to understand if there's resistance. All of the folks that I've spoken with are, I guess, excited or glad to have access to the vaccine. As far as the students that I interact with, my son is 15, so he's in that group that will
Just
now
misses, yeah.
that will now be allowed to be vaccinated, and he was asking me like multiple times a day if it was possible yet, and actually. He will most likely get his vaccination tomorrow because they're offering them at the high school in the afternoon for.
Okay, so this is something separate. I misspoke. So I thought that the high school was offering it for kids 16 and older, but if he's 15, this just must be a different program.
Yes. So yesterday they were offering them to 16 and up. And then because of the regulation change, when they offer them on Friday, they're going to be able to offer them to 12 to 15-year-olds as long as they have a parent with them.
Ooh, hot off the presses, people. I did not see that coming. Okay. Well, that's good, I would guess. I mean, so.
Just offering another point of access and a point where the students are already going to be is very helpful, I think, for students and their families. Of course, for the 12 to 15-year-olds, because they have to have a parent with them, obviously it's a little bit, logistically, it may be a little bit more complicated just based on parent schedules, but I do think it's helpful to have access right there at the high school.
Okay, so I'm going to stay with the high school. There's
Sure.
going to be a new principal in the fall, the new school year. His name is Matthew Buchanan. He's an experienced educator from Rhode Island. He's a Black man. Is this the first person of color to lead the high school? I know there have been people of color who have been house heads, but I don't believe there's been a principal who's.
No, my understanding is that he's actually the first person of color to be a principal in the district overall.
In any school?
That's what I heard.
But we know Mrs. Davis from.
Oh yes. No, you know what? I apologize. I'm remembering incorrectly. It is at the high school.
Yeah, that would make much more sense. So Mrs. Davis, I mean, was she there when you and I met at the Brown School? Was she there? No, she wasn't. Okay, so she was principal of the Brown School for a very long time. And she's very unusual because her father was principal of, I want to say Western Junior High, but I'm not sure.
You know what? I think you're right, and I apologize for misspeaking.
No, it's okay. But
the wrong.
No. But the point is that is a very interesting legacy, from father to daughter, people of color. But this is something new for the high school.
Yeah.
So have you met him? Has he come before the school committee yet, or?
I have not met him, and he hasn't come before the school committee. I did tune in to one of the group Zoom interviews with him. So I have sort of seen him, but I didn't really have a interaction, I guess I should say.
So there were 33 candidates for finalists, and then he was chosen. Were you at all part of that hiring process? I guess not, if you were.
No, I was not part of that. I wasn't, I wasn't directly involved in that process.
Right.
No.
Well, your subcommittees aren't ones that would suggest. I mean, is that how they do it? How do they pick who helps pick principals? Does it depend on the committee assignments or not?
It's not based on subcommittee assignments.
Okay.
No, that happens through the Human Resources Department.
Okay.
At least that's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. I'm recalling that there was one time there was someone who was being interviewed, and he was being interviewed in the old library in the high school, and there was a fire, and Mark Niedergang stamped it out. I had totally forgotten about that. I believe it could have been for either superintendent or high school principal. I'm not sure which.
That is quite a story.
Pardon?
That is quite a story.
Yes, well, I've been doing this a while, so anyways. Okay, so now I'm going to ask a couple of things that might not be answerable, but the American Rescue Plan, which is the really huge legislation just passed to give people money to, deal with the effects of COVID. So that is a $1.9 trillion behemoth, and 350 billion of that comes to Massachusetts, and 61.7 of that comes to Somerville. And we are one of 38 municipalities getting that state money. Okay, so that was the background. But the question is any of that money already being used or will be used in schools to hire or rehire teachers and staff?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So I might need to refer to my notes on this one, but what I can tell you is we're in the budgeting process now. We had the public hearing was last night, actually, for the superintendent's budget. And the superintendent and Fran Gorski, who is the chief financial officer, are being really strategic and careful about the way the money from these federal grants is used. They don't want to put the district in a position where they've hired people on grant money for positions that need to be, long-term sustainable positions, and then have the money run out.
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely some positions that will be, or some people who will be hired and paid from that pot of money. But like I said, they're being really careful about what positions those are. And if you want to know the specific positions, I can try.
No, that's okay. No, that's fine. So in the past, were there teachers or staff who were laid off? Were people laid off or not?
You mean due to the COVID pandemic?
Yes.
No.
Okay. No. I didn't think so, but I wasn't sure.
No, I mean, there were adjustments made to staffing that happen, like in any year, based on different programming needs and things like that, but nothing strictly because of, budgeting issues related to the pandemic. No.
Okay. So now we come to, I asked you something. You gave me the information. I thought I was going to be going this way. I ended up going that way because the thing was so big. So I had asked you about the Memorandum of Understanding between the Somerville Police Department and the schools. Mm-hmm. And you sent me a 48-page-ish long thing that I read, and that had so much stuff in it. And it's advancing equity and anti-racism. And it's this huge program push, I guess. Mm-hmm. So my first question is, how much of this is recent, meaning after the Black Lives Matter movement started, after the murder of George Floyd? Because it looks like some of this stuff has been around for a while, or been at least in the brains of people thinking about it for a while.
Absolutely. So when I came onto school committee, so what was that, January of 2019, mm-hmm. The school committee had just ratified a new equity policy, shortly before I came on. And part of that new policy was, reaffirming a commitment to equity, and, really committing to putting money behind supporting that work in the district. So you're right. That work began well before the pandemic and well before the murder of George Floyd. Yes, it's sort of ongoing work. Certainly those events, whenever they happen, sort of inform the work of the folks that are mentioned in all of those slides, the equity task force and the equity specialists. But yes, the work has been underway since before I came onto school committee.
Okay. So there is so much stuff in there. First of all, there is a director of equity and excellence. There is diversification of staff. There is a policy or mission statement, I don't know what to call it, of restorative justice. Can you define what, I think I know what it is, but can you say what restorative justice is, at least in the schools?
I'll do my best because I am not an expert in this area, but as you know, we've been talking about it a lot lately. Those slides that you referenced were from our special meeting, which was just 10 days ago.
It was May 3rd.
Right.
Yeah.
So restorative justice is the idea that when a person makes a bad decision, something that in some places they might be punished, the district is making an effort rather than a punitive response, making it a teaching response, and making that response about rebuilding the relationships in the community that were hurt in some way by that bad decision. So helping, in the case of schools, helping a student to understand how that decision impacted the community, which may be, their classroom, maybe their school, and how that student can help repair that relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's basically what it said. And I didn't know what it was, and I certainly couldn't have put it as elegantly. Actually, this is much more elegant prose than one typically finds in a slideshow. But I think I want to read exactly what it says. It says, restorative practices are interventions when harm has happened and practices to prevent harm and create a sense of belonging and social responsibility. And the emphasis is on repairing, you said is on repairing relationships, not on a specific rule having been broken. That's a very enlightened, thoughtful, I mean, is this common? Is this what everyone's doing? But it just strikes me as a very thoughtful idea. I don't know if this is what everyone's doing or not.
I can't imagine that every district is doing this. I have to expect that it's more popular than it has been in the past. And I certainly hope that more districts will adopt this approach because I find it really inspiring and it just makes a whole lot of sense to me. So,
yeah. So can you tell me which parts of this effort, the equity and anti-racism effort, which components of it you think are really important, which you think will be or already have been most successful, if you have any sense of that?
Well, that's a really big question. I think all of it is important.
Feel free to slice it off. Feel free to slice it off and say, oh, I know this is included and I know this one thing is really helpful. I have constituents or friends who say, oh, I've done this, my kid has done this, and it's been a really good opportunity.
Yeah, I guess it's hard for me to pick and choose. And I'm very distracted by noticing that the lighting has changed. I hope it's not a problem for the video. So as far as, what works or what's especially important, I mean, I think it's all working. The equity specialists that we've heard from in our meetings really seem inspired by the work that they're doing. It sounds like they're inspiring their colleagues as well. I can see how animated and energized the staff is when they're talking about this work. So to me, that in itself demonstrates that it's important that it's happening. As far as, the difference that it's making in the day-to-day operations of schools or in students' experiences, I don't think that's been quantified yet. Because although this work has been, underway for a couple of years now, especially with the pandemic, I guess it's, and with students not being in the classroom, I don't think that all of the activities that have been envisioned, have been able to be put into place yet. Clearly, the diversification of hiring is very important. Studies tell us that when students are learning from people who look like them, they tend to have more successful experiences. And, as you mentioned, we have just hired our first Black principal at the high school. And so I think that is an example of that diversification and the efforts that the district is putting behind a more inclusive search for candidates. I'm not sure if I've answered.
What I was asking was very anecdotal. So I don't expect stats, especially given COVID, but just if there's something you've heard and you've answered, is there anything else? Is there any specific program? For instance, I learned about this calculus program that they have 3 days a week to try to get students of color to take the math advanced placement classes. And they sort of pre-teach certain concepts that are then introduced more formally in class later, I guess. So, I mean, that just sounds very cool because calculus is a very high bar, I think, for anyone. And I mean, that's just very cool to have that kind of thing happening. So is there anything else like that that you would want to highlight now? And if not, then I will come up with more examples maybe to ask you about.
So, I mean, I can share another example of how equity is impacting sort of programming in the schools. One is the change in how the lottery program for Unidos is being performed. And I can go into more detail about that if that's helpful.
Well, if you could first say, for people who might not know what that is, what Unidos is.
Yeah, yes. So it is a program that runs out of the East Somerville Community School where, well, of course, the classes are taught in both Spanish and English. And so there are native English speakers and native Spanish speakers who are in the classroom together, learning from each other and modeling the languages for each other. So the way that program has been, or seats in that program have been filled in the past, has been a third for native English speakers, a third for native Spanish speakers, and a third for bilingual speakers, children who have grown up with significant exposure to both languages. So the change is that 1/3 of the seats will be for, I'm trying to make sure that I say this right. So 1/3 of the seats will be for native English speakers and 2/3 of the seats will be for native Spanish speakers.
I believe that's an understanding.
Actually, you know what? I think I just said it wrong. 1/3 will be for native English speakers and 2/3 will be for English language learners. I believe that's the distinction to make.
And that's a broader term, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So the other things in this I'm sorry, were you going to say something else?
I just wanted to sort of explain the reasoning behind that change.
Okay.
The program is intended to, it's intended as as a support for English language learners. And what was happening was fewer English language learners were getting access to the program than English language speakers. So given that the purpose of the program is to give native Spanish speakers an opportunity to solidify their Spanish skills while simultaneously, learning and improving their English skills, it was appropriate based on research and experience for the bucket for the English language learners to be larger.
So we're going to have to stop soon, but I'm going to quickly ask, did you see the Somerville Journal article? It might not be until today. It was on the web, but it might not be in the hard copy till today, about big picture of Andre Green, another school committee member, talking about translation services for school committee meetings. So
see the article. Happened? Yes, that is happening.
So how does that work? Just very quickly, how does it work? Are
Sure.
people talking? Do you have potentially multiple people talking at the same time? Can everyone hear everyone else who has to?
So the way it works is, the city and school committee use one platform, which is GoToMeeting. The translators, the interpreters, actually have Zoom channels for their particular language. So my understanding of how it works, because I haven't seen it from the interpreter's end of things, I've only seen it from the school committee's end. But my understanding is, so the interpreters introduce themselves, and then there are Zoom links put in the chat bar for each language. And then anyone who wants to follow in those languages would follow via Zoom with the interpreter.
I see. Okay. All right. So we have to wrap up. Anything you want to say? Any meetings coming up or closing thoughts or?
I guess I would say there is a school committee meeting coming up on Monday evening, just a regular school committee meeting. In that meeting and in our next finance and facilities meeting, we'll be talking more about the budget, which was presented last night. It is budget season. So in the coming weeks, we will be finalizing that budget, voting to approve it, and then it goes on to City Council.
Okay, so at that exciting point of budget, whatever, we need to close off this show. This has been School Committee Update with Ellenor Barish. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Take care.